Welcome to another episode of the Go Flush Yourself podcast with Jared Kirk and Matt Milbauer. Hey listeners, I want to thank our sponsor, Bird Hunter Supply, your go-to for premium hunting gear at birdhuntersupply.com. This family-owned business run by a husband and wife team from Idaho is driven by their love for bird hunting, dog training, and the great outdoors. For them, hunting is a treasured family tradition. Think crisp mornings in the field and the thrill of the chase and those irreplaceable moments with dogs, family, and friends. They've built Bird Hunter Supply to share that passion, curating high-quality gear to help you create your own lasting hunting memories with your crew. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned hunter, Bird Hunter Supply has you covered with top-notch equipment from dog training tools to hunting apparel, backed by exceptional customer service to make your experience unforgettable. Best of all, they're deeply committed to preserving the wild spaces we love. When you shop at birdhuntersupply.com, you can choose at checkout to direct a percentage of your order to conservation powerhouses like Pheasants Forever, Ruffed Grouse Society, or Delta Waterfowl. Your purchase helps these groups protect vital habitats and sustain the wildlife that makes our sport possible, ensuring hunting traditions thrive for generations. Visit birdhuntersupply.com today, explore the carefully selected gear, and support a family-run business dedicated to both hunters and the outdoors. That's birdhuntersupply.com. Gear up, hunt with purpose, and help preserve the wild. Hey listeners, welcome to another episode of the Go Flush Yourself podcast. This is Matt by myself today. Yes, it's another History of episode. Hopefully you're enjoying these and learning something along the way. If you do have feedback for us, topics you like to cover during these History of, please reach out. Let us know. All the different ways you can reach out to us are in the podcast description. Also, we do have a Discord channel that stays pretty active. There's always folks in there chatting. Jared and I are in there talking shotguns and bird hunting and dogs and vehicles and all sorts of stuff. We have some guests that are in there every once in a while, and then some Patreon members and some listeners in there as well. So feel free to hop in there. The link is in the podcast description. Check that out. Speaking of Patreon members, I want to thank all of our Patreon members for the support that they give each and every month. If you want to join, it's an easy $2 a month to join. You can help support the podcast and help us fund putting this together and getting it out. All right, with that, let's get into the episode. I don't know what the weather's like for you on this November morning that I'm recording this episode, but for me in the inland Pacific Northwest, it's a dreary day. It's raining. It's a little fog. Everything's a little hazy. It's my favorite kind of morning. And I've always wondered, why do I love these kinds of mornings? Why do I love the mornings that are foggy and socked in, a little cold, drizzle, mist in the air? If it was a little colder, there might be some snow coming down. Why do I love these mornings? And I think I know an answer. I think it's duck hunting. Now, I don't waterfowl hunt much anymore. I just don't have the interest that I used to have. I really like upland hunting, as evidenced by this podcast. I think I like moving around. But when I was younger, and I know this is also true of Jared, and we've talked about this before on and off the podcast, duck and goose hunting was super appealing. And we spent a lot of Saturdays and Sundays in the duck blind and the goose fields, and we woke up to see this foggy, maybe snowy, icy weather. It was like Christmas morning. We just knew we were going to have a great day out there in the field, and whether we got ducks or not, there's just something about that atmosphere. And with that little bit of nostalgia, and as we head into the holidays, I thought we'd talk about the history of the duck stamp. Where the duck stamp came from, why do we have it, why is it a stamp? If those are things you've ever wondered or are now wondering as I ask those questions, this is the history of the duck stamp. You're standing in a freezing marsh at 4:17 a.m. Your breath fogs. Your toes are already plotting mutiny. And somewhere out there in the black water, a man is whispering sweet nothings to ducks. Not because he's insane, well, maybe a little, but mostly because he paid $5, $25 now, $35, for a tiny, colorful piece of paper that the U.S. government insists he glued to a card or license and sign in ink that won't run when it gets wet. That piece of paper, it's got a painting of ducks on it, and it has saved more wild land in North America than Teddy Roosevelt, the Sierra Club, and every rich philanthropist with a guilty conscience combined. That's not hyperbole. This is the strangest, most successful, most undertold conservation story in American history. This is the federal duck stamp, and you're about to learn why a little rectangle the size of a matchbook became one of the most unlikely weapons ever wielded in the defense of an entire continent's soul. Act 1. The Catastrophe. Picture the United States in the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties. Jazz, gangsters, flappers, everyone pretending the party would never end. But out of the prairie, something was dying. The Great Plains were once described by the early explorers as, quote, an ocean of grass where you could ride all day and see nothing but sky and buffalo, unquote. By the 1930s, that ocean was being plowed under so fast that the topsoil literally took flight. The Dust Bowl. Black blizzards that turned noon into midnight from Oklahoma to the Canadian line. And when the rain finally did come back, it came back wrong. Too much, too fast, and it flushed what was left of the soil into the rivers. And those rivers, they used to spill out into millions of acres of prairie potholes, seasonal wetlands that looked like God had poked the continent with a divine finger and let shallow little bowls full of water and life. Those wetlands were the nursery of the continent. 90% of North America's ducks, half of the migratory birds on the entire Mississippi flyway, were born in those little prairie puddles. But now, drained, plowed, gone. Farmers needed every acre to grow wheat because the price was high and the banks wanted their money. So the ducks showed up every spring, and there was nowhere to land. One hunter in Iowa wrote in his diary in 1932, quote, used to be you couldn't walk across the slough without stepping on nests. Now it's just corn stubble as far as the eye can see. The sky feels empty, unquote. Market hunting didn't help. In the late 19th century, you could kill 200 ducks before breakfast, load them on a train, and sell them in Chicago for 25 cents apiece. Refrigerated rail cars turned wild ducks into cheap protein for city people who never saw a marsh. By the 1930s, the canvasback, once the most abundant duck in North America, was teetering on the edge. People started whispering the word extinction like it was a real possibility for something as common as a duck. And then something unexpected happened. A cartoonist got mad. Part 2, the cartoonist who weaponized art. His name was J. Norwood Darling. Everyone called him Ding. Ding Darling was already famous in the 1920s. His political cartoons ran on the front page of the Des Moines Register and were syndicated in hundreds of papers. He drew presidents cowering under his pen. But Ding was also a duck hunter, and in 1934, he came back from a hunting trip to the prairie and told his wife, quote, there's nothing left. It's over. He did what any self-respecting cartoonist would do. He drew a cartoon. It showed a pair of ducks standing in a desert of cracked earth, looking up to the sky with no water anywhere. One duck said to the other, I can remember when there used to be a pond here. The cartoon went viral, 1930 style, and it landed on the desk of the brand new president, Franklin Roosevelt. Now, FDR left two things almost more than politics: birds and postage stamps. Yes, really, he collected postage stamps as a kid, and he could identify warblers by song. So when Ding Darling's cartoon showed up with a letter that basically said, "Mr. President, the continent is running out of ducks, and the thing that will finish them off is us," Roosevelt did something insane. He picked up the phone and made Ding Darling the head of the entire Bureau of Biological Survey, which is the precursor to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. A political cartoonist put in charge of all wildlife policy in the U.S. You really can't make that up. Ding walks into his first meeting in Washington wearing fishing boots. He looks at the room full of biologists and bureaucrats and says, quote, "Gentlemen, we're going to save the ducks, and we're going to make the duck hunters pay for it," unquote. Cue the laughter. But then Ding explains his plan. Part 3, the stamp. Here's the idea. Simple, brutal, elegant. Every migratory waterfowl hunter in America, anyone over the age of 16 who wants to shoot a duck or goose, has to buy a federal permit. Not a hunting license, that's the state. This is federal. And the permit is going to be a stamp. A literal little postage stamp sized piece of paper that you sign across the face and carry in your coat while you hunt. The stamp will cost $1. In 1934, that's the equivalent of about $23 today. And here's the kicker. 100% of the money, minus printing costs, goes to buy or lease wetlands and protect them forever. No bureaucracy, no skimming. Hunters pay, hunters decide what art goes on the stamp, and the money turns plowed fields back into marshes. The hunters in the room looked at Ding like he's grown a second head. "You want us to tax ourselves to save the thing we're shooting at?" Ding just smiled and said, "If you love something, you pay for it or you lose it." Congress passed the Migratory Bird Hunting Stamp Act in about 30 seconds. Roosevelt signed it on March 16, 1934. They needed a design for the first stamp, fast. Ding Darling went home, sat down at his drafting table, and in one evening painted a beautiful little image of two mallards coming in over cattails. The first federal duck stamp was literally drawn by the man who dreamed it up. August 14th, 1934, the post office in Washington, D.C. opened at midnight so hunters could line up and buy the first stamps the minute they went on sale. The line went around the block. One guy waited 12 hours to buy stamp number 1. It sold at auction decades later for over $1 million. The first year they sold 635,000 stamps, $1 each. That's real money in the middle of the Depression, and the money started buying land. Part 4, the land. Imagine being a farmer in North Dakota in 1936. The bank owns more of your farm than you do. Dust pneumonia is killing your kids, and some guy from the government shows up and says, "We'll pay you cash money to turn that back 40 that hasn't grown a decent crop in 5 years into a lake." You take the check. Across the prairie, little wetlands started coming back. The Biological Survey hired unemployed guys from the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, to dig out drainage ditches in reverse, to block them, to bring the water back. And the ducks noticed. By 1939, 5 short years after the stamp went on sale, waterfowl numbers were already climbing. But then World War II happened. Steel was rationed, gas was rationed, you couldn't buy shotgun shells, hunting basically shut down. Duck stamp sales cratered. The program almost died. And then the hunters did something that still gives me chills. They kept buying the stamps, even though they couldn't hunt. They bought them because they knew the money was still buying wetlands. They bought them as a promise to the future. One sportsman's club in Minnesota raised money door to door and sent the government a check for $10,000 with a letter that said, quote, "We can't hunt right now, but the ducks still need us." That's not politics. That's love. Part 5. The Art. By the 1940s, the stamp had become something bigger than a hunting permit. It had become a tiny annual masterpiece. Every year, the Fish and Wildlife Service holds a contest. The only art competition ran by the federal government. Anyone can enter. 5 judges pick the winner, and that painting goes on the next duck stamp. Over the decades, some of the greatest wildlife artists alive have poured their souls into a piece of art that has to fit on a space 2 inches wide. One artist won it 5 times. The Leylander brothers, David Moss, the Hopman brothers have won it so many times they're basically the Kennedys of duck art, and collectors went insane. A used 1934 stamp signed by Ding Darling, $1 million. The stamp started showing up on Christmas cards of presidents. Audubon Society members who would never touch a gun started buying the stamp every year just to support the program. In 1976, they raised the price to $5. Hunters grumbled, but then paid it. In 89, it went to $15. They still paid it. Today, it's $35, and 98 cents of every dollar spent still goes straight to habitat. Part 6. The numbers. Since 1934, duck stamp sales have generated more than $1.3 billion. That money has protected over 6 million acres of land. 6 million acres. That's the area the size of Vermont and New Hampshire combined that now belong to ducks, geese, eagles, otters, native prairie, you, me, all of us forever. 98% of all the land ever bought by the National Wildlife Refuge System was paid for by duck hunters buying a stamp most people have never heard of. Let that sink in. While politicians were arguing about whether conservation was, quote, socialism, a bunch of guys in camo quietly built the most successful land protection program in American history, one tiny painting at a time. Part 7. The Paradox. Here's where it gets kind of weird. The entire system is built on killing. You have to want to shoot ducks badly enough to pay the government $35 for the privilege in order to save them. It's the conservation equivalent of it takes a thief to catch a thief. And it works. Waterfowl populations today are, in many cases, higher than they were in the 1930s. Some species higher than they've been since records began. The canvasback, remember that duck that was on the brink of extinction? Back from the brink. Redheads, pintails, wood ducks exploding. And every fall, millions of birds drop out of the sky into wetlands that exist only because someone, somewhere, bought a stamp with a painting on it. Part 8. The future. But nothing gold stays. Wetlands are still disappearing, faster than we're buying them now. Climate change is moving the prairie potholes north into Canada, where our dollars don't reach, and fewer people hunt every year. In 1934, 1 out of every 9 adult American males bought a duck stamp. 1 out of 9. Today it's 1 out of every 130. The stamp still sells 1.5 million copies a year, but a huge chunk of those are bought by collectors and bird watchers, not hunters. That sparks debate amongst hunters. They may think, this is our thing, we paid for it. But let's get real. We can't do it alone anymore. Let's let the bird watchers in. Let the stamp collectors in. Just keep the wetlands coming. Either way, the clock is ticking. So next time you're in a sporting goods store and you see that little display by the register with the current duck stamp, beautiful painting of a pair of greater scaup this year, I think, stop for a second. That tiny piece of paper in the plastic case is a relic of one of the wildest, most American stories ever told. It is a contract between a man with a shotgun and a continent that was bleeding to death. It is proof that people will tax themselves into oblivion if they love something enough. It is 6 million acres of wild hope. And it started because a cartoonist got angry about an empty sky. So maybe, just maybe, buy one. Hell, buy 2. Not because you hunt, but because somewhere out there in the dark, a duck is circling, looking for a place to land, and we still, against all odds, have to give him a place to do so. I hope you enjoyed the history of the duck stamp. It's super interesting and something a lot of us don't know about. We know we got to buy a duck stamp every year. We know it's going to something good, but we don't always know exactly what. Hopefully you know a little more. Hopefully if you don't buy a duck stamp, you go out and buy one. I'll be honest, I haven't bought one this year. I wasn't planning on hunting waterfowl. I usually buy one every year. I'm going to go buy one. And I think every year, if you can afford it, maybe go buy two. Slap one on your license and sign it so you can go take some ducks and geese and keep one in a collection. Gift it to someone else. All that money, well, 98% of it, we're taking out the printing cost, goes right back to wetlands. And even you upland hunters, and that's really talking to myself, but I know a lot of you here, we know we need the wetlands too. Where do you find pheasants? They're always near water. We know the wetlands are needed in our country. So buy a duck stamp, buy 2 duck stamps, buy 3. I'm going to keep pushing this. Buy as many duck stamps as you can. That money is almost all going right back to the wetlands. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Go Flush Yourself podcast. Jared and I will be back on a episode soon talking about our recent adventures in the field with our spaniels and with our friends. And we'll also have some guests here soon, working on nailing down some dates as well. Till then, enjoy out there hunting with your flushing dogs. We'll talk to you all later. Thanks for listening to the Go Flush Yourself podcast. You can continue the conversation on our Discord server. The link is in the podcast description. You can also follow along with Matt and Jared on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to support the podcast, you can subscribe to the Go Flush Yourself on Patreon for the easy monthly cost of only $2. You can also check out our shop and pick up a Go Flush Yourself sticker, shirt, or other merchandise. All links are in the podcast description.